So, thank you very much, first of all, for the great organization here. Thank you, Ms. Hunger. We observe extraordinary times for agriculture in general and for the pork sector in particular. We see farmers protesting in many European countries because of pressure from regulatory and from society in general. But yes, sometimes one might think that the meat consumption will disappear from the menu in the next decades. Well, I will show you that this is far from the truth. And there are, of course, some challenges, but these can be turned into opportunities if they are understood correctly. So let's first think and have a look at the global consumption perspectives. We see over the next decade a global increase of consumption, where the largest increases will be found in developing countries compared to developed countries, but in all cases it is increasing, and a higher welfare and a larger population are the main drivers in this equation. If we take out fish from this picture, pork will consist about 30% of the overall consumption. And however, the growth perspectives for developing countries and developed countries will be lower than in the past 2 decades. This means that on average there will be a 1.5% increase annually in developing countries and 0.5% increase in developed countries. So where is this consumption taking place is the large question, and if we look at the population share globally and we compare that to the daily intake of animal proteins, we know that we know that every development in Asia will have global effects on the producing countries, trading partners, especially. So we define the 3 main challenges and disruptions in this outlook. One of which is the geopolitical influences that shape trade. The U.S. and China trade war is one of the most famous ones. And but we also have the UK leaving the European Union by tomorrow. And on the other hand, we see consumers challenging value more and more. Eating food has become more complex than ever. Consumers relate their consumption to issues of health and environmental motivation. So they are as conflicted as they are challenged. And on the other hand, the third main disruption that will influence the outlook over the next 10 years will be technology and innovation, where I will show you that mainly the advanced analysis of data will be especially interesting for the pig sector. There are some automation advances in processing, yes, but in pig farms, I don't expect any robots driving around yet. So pork is expected to remain on the menu in many countries, but a wet market like we see this in China is likely not to exist at the moment. My speaker after me will explain everything about this, but it will remain a prime choice for many consumers around the globe, and as we saw, especially in Asia. If we look at production, where is that taking place? It is overwhelmed by the influence of African swine fever. There has been a decrease of more than 20%, 21%, it's estimated, of production in China in the last year, and that is mainly only 21% because there have been panic sell-offs by smallholders in the beginning of 2019, and also some stockpiling has been done. So, because of the lack of breeding stock, we expect a further decline of production of at least 15% for 2020 compared to last year. If we look at the other regions, we see a growth of production, especially, if in ASEAN 5, the ASEAN 5 countries, so especially Vietnam, we will also see a decrease of production, but looking at Brazil, we saw just the Russian perspectives, and the North American perspectives, we will see an increase of production globally. Especially in Brazil and US, larger than in the EU. But this drop in production in China had a very big effect on the prices in China. Very steep increases of pork prices, where we saw a small correction by the end of the year, but we expect further growth of prices in the first half of this year, after the Chinese New Year's Spring Festival. And if we look at the map on the left side, it becomes clear how important China is in the Asian continent. It is, yes, there are ASF cases in Philippines and Vietnam, but the pig density shown in this map, it's an estimated pig density from the Food and Agriculture Organization of the UN, just highlights how important China is in this outlook for the coming decades. But there will be a time Chinese production will recover. How fast that will be, it's very uncertain. We published a scenario by the end of last year, where we think that production, after a further decline in this year, will slowly start to recover. So we might see the first effects of an increase of production next year, but this is very uncertain. There are large projects, there are large investments, but some of them are failing. But the pressure to increase production again is very high. So this recovery will likely not be before 21, but the trajectory towards a recovery will look like this lower graph, where we will also observe a phase of faster growth of about 5 to 6% increase annually of production. And by the end of that trajectory, we'll see a different structure of pork production, with a shift towards more larger scale farms, away from smallholder farms. And of course, with advances on biosecurity and a more professional system. Until then, we will observe higher increases of imports. Until now, 2016 was the year of record imports into especially China, but and now 2019 was the record year. We expect further increase of imports in 2020, where especially China is the largest share of this equation, but also larger imports into Philippines and Vietnam, especially in Southeast Asia. So finding the right market for the right product is the main goal of pig exports. You will need to find the best price abroad. A pig consists of more than 150 products, and not every product is consumed domestically. So we need, the companies need to ship products abroad, and this is done effectively in some regions of the world, and it will become more professionally on average globally. So where is this? How is this being conducted? We see that the EU is quite effective in seeking these opportunities. We'll see here a world map of global trade with data from 2017. So you will still see Russian imports from Brazil, which of course looks different in 2018. But I'd like to highlight the importance of European exports into China. We see a lot of talk about the US-China trade deals. Yes, this is important. Also, and it will bring potentially more pork to the global markets, but it is nothing compared to the European exports towards China, where the dotted line here on this map shows the fat and offal exports, and the solid line shows the meat exports. So the situation in the EU is, of course, challenged by our own trade perspectives related to the ASF outbreaks. I'll shortly come to that. But there will be trade effects of these African swine fever outbreaks in Asia globally. No doubt about that. Here a map shows the outbreaks of ASF for the first weeks in 2020. And in the EU, we mainly see wild boars affected in the Baltic states and Poland, Hungary also, but especially in Romania and Bulgaria, we see domestic hogs infected in their backyard farm production. Important is the new development of course, the outbreaks in Belgium, which stopped 1 kilometer before the French border. But even more threatening and challenging are the outbreaks in the west of Poland, where we currently have outbreaks 12 kilometers from the German border, and the area itself of this outbreak is just much larger than the outbreak area in Belgium, which is why this is so important to monitor. An outbreak in Germany will, of course, cause large disruptions in global trade and global pork availability of exports. There is large lobbying from European countries and the sector towards China to accept the European regionalization efforts. And there are some challenges still ahead. So it's very uncertain how this will advance in the next future. But our expectation is that first an outbreak needs to happen in Germany until China will change its stance on this part. I don't expect this will happen previous to an outbreak in Germany. So there will likely be a short-term disruption unavoidable. With also causes of supplying countries of live piglets towards Germany, of course. Germany is importing about 6 million piglets from the Netherlands, 4 million piglets from Denmark. So these countries will also be affected by a potential outbreak. But let's not focus on this, because there could be a case of ASF anywhere. If we look at these jumps the outbreak made previously. This makes that the EU has an overall risk umbrella hanging over European pig production, which some countries are increasing production, some are decreasing production, especially the ones that have outbreaks. So in total, we expect not more increase of 1% this year compared to last year. but at the same time, higher exports, especially coming from Spain. So this is an interesting graph on the right side. But I'd like to highlight the increase of prices because of this supply constraints on the left. We currently had a correction at the end of last year, and yesterday the German pig association announced a further increase again, so we will see a higher level of pork prices throughout the year is our expectation. But it all relates to the threat of ASF, of course. This would change the picture completely. But these prices are currently affecting many players in the chain, especially the processors, which have to deal with higher input prices, and they cannot give these prices to the buyer, especially the retail, yet. So there is likely to be more consolidation in that part of the chain, where we saw an example of in Germany of Reinhardt. This is two larger companies merging, announcing the merger last year. The right graph shows that there are large regional differences in the developments of production in Europe, where Spain, which is the large, the sow herd of Spain, I must say, is the large bubble on the top right. The size of the bubble shows the sow herd. The second largest bubble is Germany, and the one on the most bottom left, that is Poland. On the y-axis we see the average change over the last 5 years, and on the x-axis the change between 18 and 17. There are just coming data in for 2019, pointing, at least for Germany, into the same direction. So we see a further decrease of the sow herd in Germany, especially the northwest of Europe, where you have environmental regulations constraining production increases. But also in Spain, the growth will likely to slow down. If we compare that to the last decade, we saw fast advances of production, but this will likely to slow down and has reached a peak there. But also the US in the global picture needs to be mentioned here. We see record exports from the US towards China, despite the tariffs they have, and these exports are mainly coming from other directions. So they shift the exports from other destinations like South Korea, Mexico, Japan towards China, and China is now with 25% one of the largest export destination for US pork. So how does this all relate, coming back to the three themes in the beginning, to the perspectives? I'd like to mention a few of these. So agriculture in general is at a crossroads. We are moving towards a more value-adding concept, and especially for the pig sector, this will mean opportunities from an integrated supply chain, which is not the case in many European countries, at least, and towards a more Spanish model of an integrated supply chain, where we have one company from the feed to breeding and processing, and this all under the umbrella of a certain concept. This concept could be antibiotics-free, free range. So these are smaller things that keep happening, but this bulk production of pork will likely be taking part in other regions globally, rather than the more densely populated and urban areas of Western Europe. And this has all to do with the challenged consumers. These are some examples of meat replacers, and it is taking part this trend is taking part in many levels. There are fast food restaurants that are only supplying alternative proteins. There are established fast food restaurants offering a plant-based burger, for example, but there are NGOs also pushing this agenda towards consumers for several reasons, and the reasons are different by per consumer. So sustainability is one thing, but these consumers are often younger consumers that try to find something new. They try to adjust their consumption towards this. They are just a bit more adventurous, let's say. But there are constraints in this trend as well, and especially the price of these products is one thing. Supply chain is one thing, where the ingredients of these plant-based burgers are limited in their supply and high in their price. But also this trend of trying something new that might be over, and we see that this is limitedly the growth is slowing down at the moment. Because they are available in almost every corner of the streets, and consumers have most of the time already tried these products, and the question is, do they come back again? That is still uncertain. So this trend will remain growing, but at a slower pace is our expectation. And coming back to the innovation parts I mentioned earlier, I think there are large corporations that have this on the agenda. There are, for example, a coughing monitor which can detect a coughing animal earlier through a microphone in the barn. That is an interesting concept. It is not very new, but it still needs to prove itself. There are still large false signals given by these microphones, so we need better data analysis of these microphones. But we also see other examples. For example, Alibaba working together with the Danish Crown, for example, on a new pork supply chain in China. So I expect that that the most opportunity can be gained from data analysis and advanced data analysis on the barn and through the chain. On the right, we see the pork cycle of the US, where until around the year 2000, we see a nice and clear movements of price and production, and from 2000 onwards, this is disrupted mainly because of volatile feed prices and larger exports influencing domestic prices. And this is not rocket science. What I did here, it's just taking a moving average from the production and the consumer prices and detrending it to just show these smooth lines. So this can be done on the seasonality of seasonal fertility performance of a sow, for example, but it shows that data analysis, because data is available on many parts, can still be improved in the sector. And this brings us to the conclusion that ASF will remain the dominant topic over the next decades. And we see consumers challenged by their consumption patterns, as well as they are moving forward and more linking their consumption to health aspects, environmental aspects, and these are all opportunities if you understand them correctly, and if you are leading in this field towards the future. You will not be you will be challenged more if you are just running behind this trend. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Если у кого-то есть вопросы, то у нас есть микрофон, можете поднять руку, задать его нашему специалисту, эксперту по рынкам. Если нет, то я позволю себе задать вопрос. Господин Бойхель, как вы думаете, какую роль будут играть в будущем или уже сегодня играют технологии блокчейн в обеспечении прозрачности производства свинины?
Yes. Well, it will play a major role, but blockchain is only a buzzword, in my opinion. It's more the idea of having a database with all the information coming from the different parts of the chain. If you want to call it blockchain or a distributed ledger technology, that is up to you. Blockchain is now famous on the agenda, but yes, this will definitely be a trend in the pork supply chain. We see some pig producers in the Netherlands already working together with abattoirs on RFID technology and tracing the pigs up until the carcass. So this will be used more and more in the future. But yeah, as I said, blockchain it's a famous buzzword. We need to, I think, be realistic about it and just talk about a database with all the information.
Thank you for your presentation. I have one question. You have shown the slide impossible foods conception, and you told about this. I've heard about. I have tried this food. It has the same taste. It took the same taste as pork, the real meat. So and I also heard about Bill Gates and his investment in 3D printer. So just now they can print the food. So I would like to ask you, what do you think? Will we ever have? Will we in the future? Will we lose the pig production and it will be replaced by impossible foods or 3D printers? Or will it happen or not? And if it happens, when it will take place?
Thank you. Very interesting question, very relevant, and yes, it will impact some markets, and especially urban young consumers will be impacted by it. But we still need to see if they are replacing meat consumption or if they are adding these new products to their meat consumption, and that is still unclear and uncertain in the future. And yes, printing is one technology. I think lab-grown meat is also one technology which we need to take into consideration in the future. These are very interesting innovations which we need to monitor, of course. But it's unlikely that this will replace meat consumption. That is unlikely, especially looking into these growing markets and the drivers of the growth, population increases and increases of welfare. Well, no, it will never happen. No, it will be important in some markets, but looking at, for example, the African continent, there it's likely not to happen. They will first start to eat meat in the first place. So.
Maybe I would like to add a question, because it's a very good question, and I'm just wondering, Mr. Бойхель, do you think we as pork producers or as people from the pork business should promote our pork a little bit more to fight against this? Because all these people you mentioned, or you mentioned Bill Gates or other famous persons who stand behind this, should we work together with this person who go to television and make some funding for pork or for meat in general?
It can be one tactic and one strategy, and I think it is important to actually show what you're doing right. And these concepts that are now often on the market are already doing this in a good way. But a concept, for example, saying it's antibiotic free, can also tell the consumer that the other products contain antibiotics. So there is a balance which we need to find in this, in promoting the product. But yes, I think it is a very relevant tactic, especially for pork, because it is in many markets, compared to other animal proteins, the declining meat. Yeah.
Вы говорили о потенциальных рынках, растущих рынках свинины, среди них азиатские страны. Вот если сравнить потребительские тренды в азиатских странах с требованием потребителей в Европе, которые на настоящий момент обращают очень большое внимание не только чем кормили, чем лечили животных, но и то, как они содержались, видели они солнце, голубое небо и свежий воздух. Как вы думаете, будет ли похожий тренд потребительских требований в азиатских рынках?
Also in Asia, we will see urban consumers emerge, and this is already happening. It's not a continent that has completely different consumption patterns than the European consumers. Also in Asia, we see urban consumption patterns emerging, and with, for example, alternative proteins being more and more available there. But so. Just the scale of that continent is important for the global markets. That is the message I think we need to take into consideration. It's just a larger scale, more consumers, and we need to identify these urban areas and just understand it much better. That is, I think, the main goal. We need to understand these regional markets, these differences between the regions within Asia, and then we can start forming an opportunity from it. But I think another important development is the potential decline of the population in China. After it will become older and older, the population, and probably the population growth is likely to slow down, and is already slowing down. So that is something we need to understand better and form a outlook based on that.